Hi there, Shazrin here, and this is ShazrinFinance News of the Week, where I read the finance news for you, so you don't have to, because it's boring. And trust me, boy oh boy, this week is boring. Not a lot of news this week. Okay, now let me begin with the first news I have for the week. Saudi-UAE rivalry takes shape amid OPEC spat and competing hubs. New Saudi import rules is disagreements over how to unwind OPEC production cuts, and a race to claim the mantle of the region's business center have all strained the UAE-Saudi relationship. The United Arab Emirates' refusal to agree to a Saudi-backed plan to boost oil output is the latest in an emerging rivalry playing out between the two traditional Gulf allies as both countries seek to diversify their economies and manage a long-term transition away from the petroleum industry. The unusually public spat between the UAE and Saudi Arabia over output increases by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries has kept oil prices volatile. Saudi Arabia supports a plan for OPEC producers to increase oil output in stages, but OPEC, which relies on unanimous decision-making, saw that plan unravel Monday when the UAE demanded that its own production quota be revised upward. The UAE hopes that by ratcheting up supply now on the back of the global economic recovery, it can increase revenue needed to support its economic diversification plans. Saudi Arabia is cautious that too large an increase could put downward pressure on prices. For now, the OPEC rift continues. So basically what happened is, in OPEC, Saudi Arabia has a plan, increase production for now and then do cuts later next year. UAE says if we want to do that plan, let the UAE increase its quota to create more oil, to create more income for the UAE. Saudi Arabia doesn't like that because it thinks it could decrease the price of oil, because supply and demand, if you increase the amount of oil in the market, then the price of oil will go down. And now there's a rift. Competing visions. The Gulf's two leading economies were hit particularly hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. The UAE economy shrunk around 6% in 2020, while Saudi Arabia experienced a 4.1% contraction according to the World Bank. The collapse in oil prices accompanying lockdowns is a reminder of how much Gulf states still depend on petrodollars. If you don't know what petrodollars are, it's basically the currency used to buy oil. You can't buy oil with any kind of currency because it'll be hard to manage all the buying and selling of oil that way throughout the world. So they use petrodollars, basically US dollar, but only for buying oil. Why the US dollar? Well, that's a long story, and that may change one day. And with OPEC forecasting that peak oil demand could plateau and begin to decline by late 2030s, countries are under increasing pressure to diversify their economic models. That's basically it. These Gulf states basically want to diversify their economies from oil because they think that by 2030 oil will decrease in demand and people will stop buying oil more and more. This is bad for their economy because their economy depends on oil. They are oil producing countries. So they want to diversify as much as possible, as fast as possible. By 2030, when people stop buying oil, they would have diversified enough and their economies wouldn't depend on oil as much as it does now. So they would be safe from people not buying oil at that time. Next news. Ever Given is finally leaving the Suez Canal. The Ever Given has begun its journey out of the Suez Canal more than 3 months after it ran aground, clogging up one of the world's most vital trade arteries and disrupting global supply chains. The quarter-mile-long container ship, which blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days in March, will now sail to Rotterdam in Netherlands with hundreds of millions of dollars of cargo still on board. The journey to Rotterdam could take about 2 weeks. It is estimated the total value of goods on board to be over $600 million. The Ever Given ran aground in the Suez Canal on March 23, keeping pressure on strained global supply chains as hundreds of other vessels became ensnared. The vessel was refloated on March 29 but has been held in the canal's Great Bitter Lake amid a legal battle between the Japanese ship owner Shoei Kisen Kaisha and the Suez Canal Authority, which initially filed a $900 million compensation claim for losses arising from the 6-day blockage. A formal agreement involving an undisclosed settlement was reached between the owners of the ship and the Suez Canal Authority. The holdup has trapped goods belonging to companies such as IKEA and Lenovo and many smaller businesses on board. So if you don't remember what happened, what this news is about, is basically back in March there was a huge container ship in the Suez Canal, Egypt. It got stuck in the Suez Canal and blocked all the other ships from going through the Suez Canal, which caused billions, maybe even trillions of losses in terms of amount of trades that could have been made during that time, because it blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days, and blocking it causing the goods that wants to go through the Suez Canal can't go through it. So this was a huge problem. So that's why the Suez Canal Authority is asking for $900 million, because to them it's the amount of damage that the ship has caused to them. Now, news from The Guardian. Ever Given released from Suez Canal after compensation agreed. The container ship that blocked the Suez Canal earlier this year has departed Egypt's Great Bitter Lake to fanfare and a signing ceremony for a compensation agreement between its owners and the Suez Canal Authority. The 220,000-ton Evergreen was freed after 3 months at anchor. The Ever Given was officially detained by the Egyptian authorities in April amid a dispute over compensation between its owners and the SCA after it blocked the waterway in late March. The vessel was grounded on the canal banks for 6 days, causing a backlog of more than 400 ships at each end of the canal, costing billions in trade. The battle over what caused the grounding and the SCA's large compensation demands resulted in negotiations previously described as long and arduous. The SCA originally demanded $916 million in compensation, including a salvage bonus, and $300 million for loss of reputation. No party involved has disclosed details of the compensation agreement, other than the inclusion of new tugboat for the SCA. The Wall Street Journal reported that the preliminary deal totaled $200 million, while Egyptian media and the others said the deal could be as much as $550 million. The Suez Canal is responsible for at least 10% of world shipping traffic and is a focal point of Egyptian nationalism, earning the country roughly $5 billion a year in revenues. Yep, causing billions in trade loss. That's how important this canal is. And considering it gives Egypt $5 billion a year, that's really important for Egypt. So that's it for the news of the week. Yep, told you, not that much this week, and not a really good news. That's my take. Thanks for your time. And also please watch the video before this. Helps me out a lot. Thanks. Hope you enjoy it.